Day 2 of fighting in Ukraine. Hundreds of thousands of Russian troops are now in the country.
They're moving very quickly. They're on tracked and wheeled vehicles.
We're taking a closer look at what's behind the invasion.
I don't think the end game is Ukraine.
And what Russian President Vladimir Putin could do next.
He's a cruel man.
Plus, the CDC is planning to update its mask guidelines as COVID-19 rates are dropping across the U.S.
This disease is local. This disease very much depends on what is happening.
And history in the making. A museum in the metro is sharing the stories of Black Coloradans. Russia has a third of its combat power in Ukraine, just the second day into the invasion. This video shows Russian tanks and other equipment moving into southern Ukraine. Russia claims it's blocked Ukraine's capital from the west and has full control of a key airport. The video on the left shows Ukrainian troops preparing to defend Kyiv, and on the right is the video of the damaged buildings from recent shellings. There's concerns that capital city could fall this weekend. Thanks so much for joining us for Denver 7 News at 11. I'm Jason Grenauer. This map shows Russian troop movements within the past day. They've entered the country from 3 sides, and there are also reports of an amphibious assault by sea. Now, here's other developments that we're following. The U.S. has confirmed at least 200 missile launches, and at least 100 people have died. The U.S. and NATO countries met to talk about the latest developments. NATO says it is considering deploying more troops to Eastern Europe. As Zohreen Shah reports, Ukraine's president is now calling on the Kremlin for a diplomatic solution.
As the war in Ukraine enters another day, Russian forces moving even further into the capital of Kyiv. Explosions and gunfire going off across the city. Apartment buildings shelled, emergency crews rushing to save citizens. A senior defense official telling ABC News the push towards Kyiv is going slower than Russians had anticipated, and they're meeting more resistance than anticipated. Ukraine's president speaking to his country this morning, once again asking Russian President Putin to negotiate, to, quote, stop people dying. Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov saying they are willing to talk once order is restored, accusing Zelensky of lying.
Right now, it appears the Russians are racing to get to the leadership of the Ukrainian government.
Ukraine has ordered all men of fighting age and reservists to fight in the war. Men ages 18 to 60 forbidden to leave the country. Sources telling ABC News that a third of 150,000 Russian fighters have entered Ukraine, making it even more uncertain how long Ukraine will be able to hold its ground. Russians launched more than 200 missiles at Ukraine's military targets, and some civilian areas were reportedly hit. Russian forces continue to take hold of more Ukraine, capturing Chernobyl power station, the site of the 1986 nuclear disaster. Many living in Ukraine huddled in underground subways for safety, others desperately trying to get out, choking highways leading out of the country. American citizen Benjamin Bilgahan says his wife and new baby are Ukrainian citizens, unable to leave without the correct paperwork for his child.
Just one stupid document. I couldn't get it.
The UN Refugee Agency estimates that about 100,000 people have been forced from their homes. That number certain to increase. In Washington, Zohreen Shah, ABC News.
The U.S. and other countries are hitting Russia with more sanctions. President Biden ordered a freeze on more Russian banks and cut off Russia's industries and military from U.S. technology. CSU political science professor Dr. Peter Harris says the sanctions will affect Russian citizens, but not President Vladimir Putin.
The sanctions they didn't stop the war, the threat of sanctions, and the imposition of sanctions won't stop the war either. The only thing that would stop Vladimir Putin is him achieving his objectives in Ukraine.
Harris says Putin's objective in Ukraine is to get back to the negotiating table with the U.S. and Europe. He gave a list of demands to create a new security order in Europe, including making sure Ukraine isn't a part of NATO. Putin wants NATO forces to retreat to their 1997 deployments. That means moving troops out of Baltic states and Poland and into Germany.
He knows that we care about Ukraine, even though it's not a NATO member. He knows that people like President Biden care deeply about the plight of Ukrainians. He's a cruel man, and he knows that he can hurt those people so badly that we may come back to the negotiating table and offer him more than we did a week ago.
Harris also told us it's unlikely Putin will invade NATO countries. If that happens, it would invoke Article 5, which means attacking one NATO member is an attack on all NATO countries, including the U.S. Now, some people in Russia are protesting Putin's decision to invade Ukraine. There have been demonstrations in dozens of cities.
And I want to cry about this because I so love my country, but I don't like our government and what they do.
More than 1,700 people have been arrested so far. Governor Jared Polis is also taking action against Russia. He's directed his office to terminate any contract with a Russian state-owned company. He's also asking the state's IT office to focus resources on protecting the state from a possible Russian cyber attack. Polis added that Colorado is ready to welcome Ukrainian refugees and is prepared to provide Ukraine with support. Now, the invasion will likely have an impact on things here in the U.S., things like gas and food. U.S. lawmakers are urging President Biden to release emergency oil reserves in order to keep prices down. Russia produces about 10% of the world's oil and 30% of the natural gas for Europe. Sanctions and a war would create instability in Europe, which will cause prices to rise. Now, there is some good news. Colorado is one of the top 10 oil producers in the U.S., so we probably won't see the same kind of price spikes as other states. AAA says the price of gas in Colorado is up just a penny overnight. Prices of wheat, corn, and soybeans all surged yesterday. Russia is the world's largest wheat exporter. We spoke with the director of DU's Supply Chain Management Program. He says the uncertainty in the market will drive prices up.
How disruptive will this be? Is this something that's going to last for 2 weeks, or is it something that's going to last for 2 months? And all the markets are trying to think through what's happening and predict this, and that's what you're seeing from the price increases.
AG Secretary Tom Vilsack said Thursday it's too early to predict how much food prices could be affected. There is some good news on the stock market. Stocks are rebounding today after spending most of yesterday in the red. Right now, stocks are up more than 700 points. It comes as the reports come out that Russia may be willing to speak and talk diplomatically with Ukraine. We will be following the latest developments from Ukraine and Eastern Europe all day. You can watch Denver 7 News anytime. Just download Denver 7 Plus for your favorite streaming device. Governor Jared Polis will give us an update about Colorado's response to the pandemic this afternoon. We will hear from him, the CDPHE director, and the COVID-19 incident commander at noon. You can watch the governor's announcement on Denver 7 Plus. Meanwhile, the CDC is expected to update its mask guidelines today as COVID-19 cases drop across the U.S. Right now, the CDC recommends people living in areas with high transmission levels wear masks inside. The agency won't change that guidance.
Today, I don't think is the day to remove masks, just in terms of the sheer numbers that we're at. But we also know that this disease is local. This disease very much depends on what is happening. It's uneven around the country.
The CDC says COVID-19 is still a concern, but we don't have to be worried about it all the time. Today is the last day students and staff in Denver Public Schools will have to wear masks. The district is ending its mask mandate because the city is seeing a rapid drop in COVID cases.
We will let the science and the numbers drive our decisions just like they have in the past. If there is another spike and we see another variant that comes in and we need to put our mask back on for the safety of our students and our staff, that's exactly what we'll do.
Other news now, drug use and crime have plagued Denver's Union Station for years, and now the Denver Police Department is doing something about it. As Denver 7's Christian Lopez reports, a major operation led to dozens of arrests.
A total of 42 people were arrested during the drug sweep. 10 of those were felony charges. The rest were misdemeanors and drug offenses. The focus of Wednesday's operation was on people that had outstanding warrants and who were participating in illegal activities. DPD's outreach case coordinator also helped connect 10 people with resources and services they needed. We know community members have been calling for change at Union Station as crime continues to increase. We heard from another perspective this time, from a young man who is a recovering addict. He did not want to show his name or face, but he said drugs are easy to find at Union Station.
You can just go there and find it instantly. Yeah, oh yeah, they're just, people are just standing there all day feeding it to the homeless people, man. It's sad.
He did tell us he was glad to see the steps being taken to improve safety in that area. And we looked at the data. Since the first day of 2022, there have been 500 arrests at Union Station. Reporting in Denver this morning, I'm Christian Lopez, Denver 7.
Denver is taking steps to try to address drug overdoses and the fentanyl crisis. The city says there were at least 215 confirmed fentanyl-related deaths last year. That's up 36% from 2020. We will hear from the Denver Police Department about the city's plans later today on Denver 7. This past weekend, 5 people died in Commerce City after taking cocaine laced with fentanyl. Colorado will get close to $400 million from an opioid settlement with Johnson & Johnson. The company settled a lawsuit over its role in the opioid addiction crisis. Colorado AG Phil Weiser said the state and local governments will get the money later on this year. The money will go to efforts used to fight the epidemic. It's a historic day for the Supreme Court. Still ahead, we're learning who President Joe Biden wants to see sitting on the high court. Plus, will Aaron Rodgers come to the Broncos? The potential for the possibility of some news.